If you've watched my video, How to Start a Startup in University, in that video, I talk about the 4P framework. And in this video, I'm going to be breaking down this 4P framework and actually giving you more of an executable checklist to, put that 4P framework into actual use. Now I'm going to say the magic word and see what happens. Knowledge. You see? Pew pew. Okay, so let's get started with perspective. So if you think about a startup, essentially you are trying to solve a problem with a product. We will talk about them later, but you want to have your expected desired outcome, and that normally is your goal, right? Essentially, you want to work backwards from the goal. Amazon has this really famous framework that they use as well, which is working backwards from the customer experience. And so over here as well, you want to work backwards from your ultimate goal. What is it that you really want to achieve? What problem are you solving? You essentially have to make your goal so specific, measurable, realistic, all of that, those SMART goals. But yeah, it's supposed to be a goal that's supposed to rally everybody and make sure that everybody is working towards the same direction. For us, our goal is to make the online learning journey, shorter, to make it more seamless, to make it more fun, to make it more sociable. These are, again, not very specific goals, but we understand that people on the internet spend about 5 hours on the web with the intent to learn, essentially just browsing and searching through different kinds of content. And so we want to reduce that time. And yeah, that's our goal. And it makes us all really focused on making sure that we achieve that goal. And so whatever we want to do from a growth standpoint or a product standpoint, at the end of the day, we know that this is what we're trying to work towards, right? Making the online learning journey much more fun and seamless. You always want to work backwards from the goal and decide, okay, what are these ideas and experiments that are going to help me achieve that goal? Have a goal, make it specific, break down that goal into a bunch of ideas and experiments you can do to achieve that goal, figure out what are the important steps needed to achieve that idea, and what are the executable tasks needed to make sure that you actually get things done. Next, I want to talk about people. And essentially, if you remember, there are two most important kinds of people that you need to care about: your team and your users. So when I look at my team, in terms of values, I really found this amazing checklist by Naval Ravikant that he uses, which is intelligence, energy, and integrity. Intelligence doesn't mean that I only want to work with smart people, but the thought process here is that people that I want to work with have the aptitude and capability to become extremely intelligent. And that just means that they're curious, they want to learn, they're not scared of failure. And so intelligence essentially means that for me. The second thing I look for in my teammates is that they have to have energy, right? Because I've been doing this for 2 years now, and I've been failing again and again and again. And it takes a lot of patience and energy to get things right. The third value that I care about is integrity, right? Simon Sinek has this really cool story that when he worked with the Navy SEALs, essentially they have two variables that they look at with Navy SEALs, right? One is performance and the other is loyalty, right? So what he realized was that the Navy SEALs would rather have a high loyalty person and a medium performer versus a high performer and medium loyalty, right? And the reason for that is they said that, can you trust them with your life, but can you trust them with your vibe? The idea here is you want to work with honest people who don't want to betray you, because the cost of that is just too high. As for personality, which is essentially cheetahs, dolphins, ants, and crocodiles, this is something that I picked up while I was doing my master's at HEC Paris, right? So essentially, cheetahs are people with speed. You want to have speed in a startup because things change quite dramatically, quite dynamically, or quite quickly. And so you want to have that pace and you want to be able to go quick. Again, it comes down to the idea of energy, right? You want to have high energy. Then you have dolphins, and dolphins are essentially more of your team camaraderie, people that make sure that the organization culture is healthy, the startup culture is healthy, people are not breaking down, because in startups you do break down quite a bit, right? You stress out a lot and things like that. So these are people that make sure the morale is good, and yeah, you need dolphins. Ants are essentially your hard workers. They execute, they get stuff done, right? A lot of the startup work that is needed is not on ideation, right? It's more on execution, because everybody can have ideas, but you actually need to get stuff done. And so your ant personality are people who do not shy away from working hard, and they understand that behind every good idea is a lot of groundwork that needs to be done. And ants essentially the personality type that they bring that to the table. And then you have your crocodiles. This is the tough one, right? Because sometimes you have to work with crocodiles. I mean, a lot of the times you actually have to work with crocodiles, because these are people that are a little bit more stern. They have a very fixed way of doing things, or they're a bit more serious. But they're really important, right? Because they bring something else to the table, a different flavor, right? They might not be so cordial, and so they might get you out of your comfort zone. They might challenge you. And so, yeah, just because it's a crocodile, it doesn't mean like a reptilian sort of personality, right? Technically reptiles also have a really good personality. It just depends on how you look at it. And so, yeah, you want to give equal opportunity to everybody, but you want to have as diverse people in your team as possible. So in terms of skill stack, you really want to be looking at two different skill sets, or a combination of skill sets. One is that of a technical archetype. So, you have usually a technical founder who is the hacker, and you have the non-technical person, which is the hustler, right? This is the person who looks after growth. But I do believe that you need a third archetype called the hipster. And so hipsters are essentially people who understand more about, people and empathy, and they're more problem solvers and creative thinkers. Hipsters, I think today in a world of tech, when even tech is getting automated, you really need someone who understands people and specifically their users, can translate the user requirements to the hacker and to the hustler, right? And that's very important. So I think your hipster sometimes can be your hacker or your hustler, but you essentially want these kind of skills, right? Startups are dynamic, right? So your role is going to change as your startup requirements and goals change. The second kind of people that you need to care about are, of course, your users. You want to be qualifying your users, because you don't want to be asking the wrong questions to the wrong users. And Eric Mikukovsky of Y Combinator has this really nice framework of questions that he uses to qualify his users, but also to understand more about the problem that he's trying to solve. And so the first question is, what's the hardest thing about doing this thing? And so if you think about it, this really helps you understand more about how intense is the problem. That is a very good thing to understand, right? The more intense the problem might be, the more the user might be willing to pay for it. When is the last time you encountered this problem? And so this more talks about frequency. This tries to gauge the frequency and gives you more of an idea about like how often maybe the user has this problem. Why was this hard? This is a very good question to ask, because why questions in general are very open-ended, and the user can now kind of let out their hearts on the floor. And yeah, whenever you ask somebody why, and if they're a serious user or a serious person about answering the question seriously, they're gonna really help you understand and get more clarity about their problem. And so if you read Simon Sinek's Start with the Why, I think you get why this question is important. What have you done, if anything, to solve this problem? And so here you just want to understand if the problem was intense enough, the likelihood that the person has done something to actually solve this problem is high, right? And so here you're gonna understand what they actually tried to do to actually solve the problem, right? Let's say that they have actually used existing solutions in the market to solve their problem, right? Even if not, the last question really digs deeper into everything that they've tried, themselves in a hacky way, or using a product that exists in the market. But the last question really breaks down into like, what is it that they don't love about the solutions that they've tried? And so here, this gives you a better starting point to actually start defining the variables or the factors that you will compete on. Okay, let's talk about the problem. First things first, don't be a simp. Yeah, I know it's harsh, but essentially, don't be a CISP. And what that means is don't be a solution in search for a problem. Don't make up imaginary ideas and think that those imaginary ideas are needed. Kevin Hale from YC came up with the term CISP, and I couldn't agree with it more. What he observed was that a lot of startups are not really trying to solve problems, but they're rather solutions, always searching for a problem. And so, how do you really evaluate your startup idea? Well, you want to see that it is a popular startup idea. So, a popular startup idea, and as per Kevin Hale, is at least 1 million people should have that problem, right? You want to have a growing problem as well. Essentially, that market should be growing by at least 20% a year. Your problem should be urgent, right? You want to solve it right now. Your problem should be frequent, how probably hourly you're just keep getting this problem again and again, so it's super frequent, right? Maybe it's a very expensive problem, right? So the market opportunity there is $1 billion plus. Maybe it's a mandatory problem, maybe a law has changed and your solution is going to be extremely desirable now. So you want to be able to really see. Of course, you're not going to win every checklist item, right? You're not going to have a popular problem with growing market, which is urgent, frequent, all that, right? You want to understand that you have at least some of these factors to some of the degree, right? And that's good enough to get started. All right, let's talk about product. For product, there are two checklists or ideas that I find super intuitive and super useful. Essentially, one of them is the Marty Kagan framework to understand whether or not you have a product that customers love. And there are four requirements to actually achieving that. The first is desirability. And what that means is essentially whatever you're building, your product, is it desirable? Is it something that the user or the customer wants? Or is it just something you're imagining that they might want? There's a difference. There's a very fine difference. And so you want to make sure that the user finds this product desirable, that the user can actually use the product, so the usability is good. Now, this speaks more to the user experience, the user interface, those kind of ideas. Is it usable or not? And that again is more of a product sphere. Feasibility goes more into product development, and so that's really your engineering. Like, are you actually able to build out whatever you think is desirable and usable by the user? So you want to make sure that you can actually build it out, right? Some features take a day to build, a few hours to build. Some features take weeks to build. So you want to understand, like, is this really feasible? And do I really have the time to actually build this product? And the last one is viability. So this is more from the business standpoint. You want to understand, does this add value to your business? And so really what desirability, usability, feasibility, and viability does is that it marries the user, the experience, the tech, and the business all together. And that's why this checklist is probably one of the most useful checklists for each product idea or feature that you might have. The second framework that I have to do with product is more specific to product design, which is inspiration, ideation, and implementation, right? So you want to be able to really, in your inspiration phase, understand more about the problem, ask questions from experts, ask questions from users. You're just trying to understand more and more about the problem you're trying to solve. The next phase is ideation. Once you've understood more about the problem, you've talked to users, you've talked to experts or people, veterans in the industry, or people or companies that have already tried to solve the problem. Then you want to go into ideation, which is where you start making some real decisions and start to imagine what your problem is and like how your solution marries into the problem. So ideation phase is more of just ideating that, oh, okay, there's like, this is our main problem, and there are so many ways that we can try and solve the problem, because there often are, right? And so here you want to start making some real decisions about why is this idea better than this other idea. And then you finally go into the implementation phase, which is really getting down and dirty with the ideas, the winning ideas that you found, and actually implementing it and putting it out in the world and testing it out. And so that's it. For anyone that actually stuck till the end, I'll give you a bonus P, which is prescription. There is no prescription or how to actually build your startup. And so everything I've mentioned here might not be applicable to you. So yeah, truly try to understand what it is that is truly relevant to you and your startup, and apply it accordingly. Don't think that this video is going to help you build the next startup. It's just a starting point. And so thank you, and
Meow.